Welcome back to my channel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to be live because I almost forgot that I wanted to go live, so I'm glad I even remembered. Anywho, my name is Tiana. I do all kinds of things on this channel. Following my Microlocs journey is the biggest thing. I do follow other lock journeys, traditional lock journeys. I do hair tutorials, head wrap tutorials. We talk about hair care. But I do other stuff too, like sewing, singing. If any of that interests you, go ahead and subscribe or press the like button if you like this video. If you are subscribed already, thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in again. Okay, so before we even get started, I gotta go and check out how this is looking to y'all because, you just never know. And it's nothing like talking and then realize way too late that nobody is watching but you. All right, so I'm just checking this out. Hey, girl. Oh, thank you. So good. So I know at least I'm live. All right, so I'm just checking. All right, good. So at least I'm live and everything is working. Yeah, y'all, so let's get into it. And also, of course, thank you so much to all of my subscribers, all of you that support, that tune in and watch the lives and the hair tutorials and comment, all of that good stuff. And also, please don't be offended because sometimes people say things to me about my channel and things like that. And I do try to remember the names because I really want to know who's watching. But just keep in mind that we only get a number. Like, even during the lives, I only get a number. So unless you comment or something, then I don't know who's watching. It doesn't tell you who. It just gives you a number of how many people are watching. But I never know who it is until they stop in and say hi, like Shades of Sage did. So I do appreciate everybody that watches. And you don't have to comment. But when you do comment, thank you so much. Thank you, Shades of Sage. Hi, Sister Carolyn. So when you do comment and you say hi or greetings like these two ladies did, then I know that you're watching. So that's always super fun and super encouraging. But yeah, y'all, let us get into it. I hope that you ladies are both doing well and all that good stuff. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to subscribe to my sister's channel. I don't know how to say your name. I don't know, but hey, all I can get is Van Herden. I don't want to mess up the first part, but hey, don't forget to subscribe to my sister's channel. She's all things motherhood over there. You'll learn a lot of stuff about motherhood, and if you are a mother, there's so much on there that you can relate to. So go over and check out her channel if you haven't already. And if you are already subscribed to our channel, make sure that you're up to date on the videos. We try to pump out these videos and do as much live videos as possible to get our watch time up. She already reached 1,000 subscribers, so kudos to her. And then the next step is to make sure that you have the 4,000 watch hours, y'all. 4,000 watch hours. That's not easy, okay? The subscribers wasn't easy. The watch hours not easy. Let's get into it. So many of my clients, so let me just say. So I get a lot of clients that start off natural hair and then I convert them. Not even on purpose, but I think like a lot of them, watch my channel and support. So thank you ladies all for that. But it's just something that if you are natural, you've been natural for a while, this kind of is the next step, right? Like, if you've been natural for a while, for the most part, you tried everything, and now you're looking for something different, and locks is kind of the next step. So a lot of my clients change from being loose naturals to getting locks, and they often are wondering which one should they choose. Now, I think I did a video on this channel, but I'm going to do another one, and then I'm going to try to follow this up with shorts that you can kind of quickly get your answer from, because you do have a couple of decisions to make on whether or not you should be traditionally locked or Microlocs, sister lock, that type of thing. And before I forget, because I get this question a lot also, Microlocs and sister locks essentially are the same thing. They both are tiny locks. The difference is that sister locks has a patented tool, a patented grid mark, so grid mark. I don't even know if that's what I want to say. I mean grid pattern. But how they decide to part your hair and their technique and all of this stuff was secret for the Sister Loc for a long time. But somehow we have figured out some of their methods, like some of their points and rotations, and that is what allowed some of us to have Microlocs, which is just like the Sister Locs, except they might not be as small. And if a certified Sister Loc consultant did not install your Sister Locs, then you do not have Sister Locs. So even though mine are super small, they would be considered Microlocs or tiny locks. If I had let a Sister Loc consultant do it, then they would be called Sister Locs. So Sister Loc is really just whether or not you had a Sister Loc consultant do it and use their special grid pattern and their special tool and all that fun stuff. But essentially it's the same thing, small locks. So I hope that helps, because I get that question a lot too. Like, do I do Sister Locs? Do I do Microlocs? I do Microlocs. And I'm working on Sister Locs, you know, just to get that under my belt, God willing. All right, here we go. We are comparing Locs and Microlocs. So first thing, and I just wrote down a couple of things, and like I said, I'll do a shorts and kind of put everything together. Retying or retwist, that's something you have to consider. So I did do a video on what a retie is and what a retwist is. A retwist is essentially taking your new growth and twisting it into a coil, and a retie is using a special tool to kind of pull your lock in through the roots at different points until it all gets tight up to the scalp. So again, if you need a video on that, I can go ahead and do that, so just let me know. But traditional locks most of the times use a retwist. So traditional locks use the retwist for the most part. You can do interlocking for traditional locks, but mostly interlocking is for smaller locks, and retwisting is generally for their bigger locks. Now, can you do vice versa? Yes. Are there people with Microlocs who retwist their roots? Yes. So you can always, and that's with just like almost any hair journey and hair care thing, you can go back and forth and decide what you want to do. But generally speaking, retwisting is for your larger traditional locks, and interlocking or a retie, where you pull the lock through the root over and over again, that is for your Microlocs. So that could be something to help you decide. All right, the next part is which one is longer to do, to retie your hair or to retwist it. If you are following me and you've been following me, retying takes longer. Now, there are some people who can get a good retie done in like 3 hours. Not myself. Most times it takes me about 4 hours to do it on someone else. But retying takes longer. Retwist, the actual retwisting part, does not take as long. And I'm not talking about like washing your hair and drying it. I mean like the actual getting it retwisted or getting it retied. Retying takes longer. So if you are somebody who does not like to sit in the chair for a long time, then Microlocs might not be for you, only because retying takes a while to do. Would I like to become a Sister Loctician? Absolutely. Yes, and I have looked up classes, so it seems very doable. So, you know, pray for me, because hopefully I can do that soon, just because I want to know all their secrets. I want to know all their secrets, and I can't find out unless I take the classes. So I want to do that so I can get to know all of their stuff, and then I can be a certified Sister Loc consultant. And then when people ask, do you do Sister Locs, I can say, yes, of course I do. Okay, so the next one. Able to maintain your new growth on your own, which is easier? Traditional locks. And I say traditional locks is easier because traditional locks usually have a, you know, you retwist them. And that's a little easier for someone to do. Now, if you are a hair person and you enjoy doing hair, or you enjoy doing your own hair, or you are very meticulous about your hair to the point where you don't mind spending hours doing your hair, then you can do interlock on yourself. Because I do my own, and there's plenty of people who would do their own. Thank you, Shades of Sage. But yeah, definitely would want to be a Sister Loc consultant. But you can do interlocking on your own, absolutely, without a problem. If you're just like a regular hair person, or you don't want to spend a lot of time doing your hair, retwisting is easier for you. And again, you would go with traditional locks, because traditional locks usually are retwisted. Again, you can retwist smaller locks, but for the most part, retwisting is for the larger locks. Let's see. Able to install it on your own. The easiest one to install on your own is traditional locks. Because one, it takes less time because they're usually bigger. Two, yeah, mostly because it's bigger. And for Microlocs and the smaller locks, for me, and this is not for everybody, but for me, because I don't play those games. Like, I like for things to be neat and in its place. For me, if you're gonna go with smaller locks, like I am very particular about parts and parting, especially because you want to do the interlocking at your roots, and it's not as easy to grab and go and interlock as it is with traditional locks. So, with that being said, installing it on your own, the easiest ones to do would be traditional locks because they're bigger. And I'm talking about if you're doing an install, like, honestly, any install, because traditional locks gives you a little more room to kind of just grab pieces and go and not be so worried about your parting. Again, if you love hair, you like doing hair, you don't mind sitting and doing your hair, then either one will work for you. It really does not matter. But traditional locks are a little bit easier to install. Comb coils though, if you were trying to do comb coils, like you're not starting your locks with twist or something, comb coils is a technique that if you haven't tried before or you're not really sure about it, then that might be difficult if you're trying to do traditional locks with comb coils. But for the most part, starting your own traditional locks is easier than starting your own Microlocs or your interlocks. And any of you with locks, you can absolutely chime in. If you have any questions about locks, definitely leave them in the comment section now, or you can leave them down below so that I can, help you out. But don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to like this video, y'all. All right, let's see. Longer install. I feel like we talked about that. So your initial putting your locks in, traditional locks are easier because they're bigger and Microlocs are smaller. So whatever method you use for Microlocs, they're smaller. It's going to take you a little bit longer to put them in than it would traditional locks. So if your traditional locks are bigger, it's not going to take you as much effort and as much work to put them in. Versatility. Microlocs are better with versatility. And that's mostly because they are so small that sometimes it just looks like your hair is just out. Like when you have traditional locks and they're bigger, for the most part, you could tell somebody with traditional locks has locks. When they're small, it kind of takes you a while. It takes you like a double take before you realize that they have some kind of locks or something done to their hair. And even though, let me just say this, traditional locks are still versatile. You can do virtually any style that you used to do while you were loose natural. You can do it with any locks. Large locks, small locks, medium locks. The only difference is the fullness, because the smaller the locks are, if you are not somebody with super thick hair, the smaller the locks are. If you try certain styles, then it might show your scalp a little more with your larger locks than it would with your smaller locks. Like the smaller locks gives you more volume. And I gotta hold that thought, volume, because I don't want to forget that. So somebody remember volume. That's my next one. We have to talk about that. But yes, as far as versatility, you get more of it with the Microlocs because you can kind of change your front parting a little more, whereas your traditional locks or your larger locks, your hair is kind of set in those parts a little bit, so you could do something like curl it or do a braid out or a twist out, but those front parts, depending on how big they are, they're not going anywhere. Like they're going to be what they are. So even though you can get a curl, a twist, like you can get a different wave pattern going on, you can get a ponytail, with your traditional locks, or a side part or two. Like you can do any style with both traditional and Microlocs. The only difference is that you will see your parting with your larger locks more than you will see a parting with traditional locks. And that is why I am so set on starting, like somebody said, I think Shades of Sage told me about stylists who do not do other people's locks that somebody else started. And one of that is because of parting. Because if your parting is not right, or not put in the right place, then trying to have versatility could be a little difficult because you put maybe awkward parting in there somewhere. And that's why I do like to start my clients myself, so that I can make sure the parting is able to do the things that you want your hair to do in the long run, and not just look good the day you got them installed, but they will look good in virtually any style that you chose. All right, Shades of Sage said, I think it's important to know how you want your locks to look to decide which way to start them. Absolutely. And I think we did a video on that, but I feel like that deserves its own video because you get different looks for both styles. But let me also say, if you are somebody who wants thick and juicy locks, your best bet, the best way to start it for thick and juicy locks are comb coils. And a lot of people don't like that, but that is like the best way to start it. Now, if you want them just regular thick or whatever, you could do traditional locks because they're bigger. And if you want them to stay on the smaller side, then you would go with the Microlocs or the sister locks because they will stay on the smaller side. But that is a very true statement. Think about what you want them to look like in the future and not so much what they would look like in that moment, because they're going to change. And you don't know how much they're going to change, but they're definitely going to change. So versatility, Microlocs absolutely have more versatility, and that's only because they're so small. It creates such fullness that you don't see our scalp and our parting as much unless we separate our hair and pull some up. Then you can see it. Whereas with the larger locks, you kind of do see your parting most times. Not all the times, but most times and many times. So whatever style you do choose to do, you can see your parting still. All right, easiest to take out. I thought this was important to put on there. Yeah, Shane, we definitely should have did the coils because it would have made it really big like you wanted it to. So, but that's okay because you still get your roots coiled. And that's why coils are best, because that is what you do to your roots. You coil your roots. So if you start with coils, it gives you a much more uniform look. All right, easiest to take out. I get this a lot from some clients too. You know, one, because in our religion, we can't cut our hair. So cutting out our locks when they're too long or whatever is a no-no. So we can't do that. So we are going to have to, let's say it gets too long, or we just want to change up our style, we would have to comb them out. Now, you can comb out any locks, any of them. And they say, I mean, I don't know how true it is because you don't see this happening often, because most people do comb out their traditional locks more so than their Microlocs. So, but they say interlocking is the easiest to comb out, which I can kind of see how, because interlocking is like forming, it's literally like forming a bunch of X's on your hair over and over and over again. So I feel like if I was to take a comb or a small piece and put it right in the middle and break it apart, that it should come undone. That's what they say. However, if you already know, you do not plan on keeping your locks in for a long time. Like you already know you're just going to keep it in for a few years and take it out. Maybe because you want to grow it. Maybe because, I don't know, you don't want it to get that long. Whatever. Like if you already know you're going to take them out, go with the larger locks. Because, listen, I have like 300 locks and some people have more. I do not want to be combing out 300 locks. Like knowing I'm going to do it and turn around and do it in a year. Let's see. Girl, I don't know if I'm saying that right because the extra S at the end is making me not be confident. But she said that she has Microlocs that were started with 2-strand twists, and she's a year in and loving the journey. Good. And I hope you continue to love it. And girl, it only gets better. It only gets better from here. Like they just transform so much. So it definitely should get better for you. But yeah, so what were we saying? If you know you're going to take them out, please go with the larger locks. Can you comb out extra small locks? Yes, you can comb out any locks you want. One lady on YouTube had 1,000 locks and she combed hers out. So it can absolutely happen and you can do it. But just, I wouldn't try to comb out small locks if I did not have to. If I'm going to keep my locks for years and years, and I know like this is just what I want to do kind of for the rest of my life, unless there's a reason why I have to switch it, then cool, the small locks are cool. But if you already know, I'm only trying to keep this in for 2 years, 3 years, and then I want to comb it out and see the length that I retained, go with the larger ones. Why put yourself through that stress of combing out 600 locks when you can only have to comb out 50 locks, 100 locks, 120, and now you just multiplied that 3 times. Like, I wouldn't do that. Nor do I think that is the better choice either, because your hair being in such a small lock, it's kind of like having your hair in micro braids and taking that out versus having your hair like jumbo box braids and taking that out. Like, losing as much, it's not going to be as much stress on your hair combing out the larger locks than it is combing out the smaller ones. So if you already know you're taking it out soon, like within a couple of years, 4 years or less, get the larger ones. Do not get the smaller ones. Just make it easier on yourself. Products needed. Which one needs more products? The traditional locks. And that's because a product is used to do your retwist. My Microlocs, honestly, like, I could get away with putting nothing in it, literally. I only wash it, I put aloe in it, and I only do that because of my scalp. If you're somebody who has like a loose scalp or naturally like oily hair, you probably can get away with putting even nothing more in it. But with your traditional locks, you do use something to do the actual retwist. And there are people that spray their Microlocs to do their retie. I personally don't. I like to do it on dry hair with nothing in it. So if I am going to spray it, I will do it afterwards, and that's only if I have to. But as far as products, your traditional locks need more only because of the retwist. Only because of the retwist. Yeah, only because of the retwist uses a product. That's the only reason why. Like, I could imagine that you could do a retwist with just water. I just don't know if you would want to do it with just water, because that would be drying, and that would be like just tempting your hair to break off at the root. So I wouldn't do a retwist with just water. I would have something so I could have a little bit of slip. But yep, as far as products needed, a little bit more for the traditional locks than you do need it for the Microlocs. Bigger or smaller? Again, if you want bigger locks, you're going to go with traditional. Smaller, you're going to go with the Microlocs, hence their name, Microlocs. Yes, oh, and that brings me back to the one thing I didn't want to forget, volume. Don't forget to thumbs up this video, y'all. If y'all are enjoying the video, thumbs up. You got any questions, leave them in there below. You have any comments, you agree with me, you disagree with me, go ahead and put that in the chat box too, so we can get your opinion. But volume, if you have low density hair, okay girl, thank you. Thank you, Randomly T. If you have low volume, low density hair, Microlocs are better for you, because Microlocs create a fuller look, a fuller appearance. I have low density hair, so I already knew I needed to do Microlocs, because traditional locks was just going to be a whole bunch of scalp showing for me, and I didn't want that look at all. If you have high density hair, like, meaning, again, I'm not talking about if you think your hair is thick, because if you see my hair when it is curly, it looks like it is so much more going on than it really is, and it's not until I would straighten it out or blow dry it out that you can see it. So if you have hair like in any square inch of your head, you have a bunch of strands, like you got a lot going on, so that you have thick hair, a lot of hair on your scalp, not that it just looks thick, then traditional locks are good for you, because when they swell up, it will look full. But if you have low density hair, if you have finer hair, Microlocs are a little bit better, because it creates more fullness, and it helps you cover in every space or every gap that maybe you would have from having a parting. So yep, Microlocs better if you have low density hair. Traditional locks if you have really thick hair. And again, do not be fooled by your curl pattern, because if you have extra curly hair like myself, it will look a lot thicker than it is. So take note of what your hair looks like when you would have it straightened, and take note of what it would look like if you stretch it out. If it loses its thickness, if you put in a ponytail and your ponytail is only but so big, versus you putting it in a ponytail and your ponytail is thick, that's a good way to see too if you have thick hair. But if you can pull a ponytail this tight, you probably don't have thick hair. But if you do have a thick ponytail, then you probably have thick hair, and you can go with traditional locks. All right, the time to mature, the time it takes your hair to look like locks, to look like locks and be locks and be locked in. Traditional locks do that faster than Microlocs. Microlocs, it tends to take us like 2 years before we start looking like we have locks, especially if you did something like started with braids or two-strand twists. You can see the two-strand twist pattern for a long time. But if you have traditional locks, and part of that I think is because traditional locks wash their hair a little bit more than Microlocs, and they build up a lot more frizz that can cover around the lock and kind of surround it to cover up the fact that it was like two-strand twisted or whatever the case may be. But traditional locks, it takes them like, honestly, like maybe around like 8 months to a year. Then your traditional locks are going to start looking like locks. And that's because they're bigger. So when their hair starts breaking up, like when their hair starts getting this frizzy look, it starts looking a little bit more like locks. So traditional locks definitely seem to mature faster than Microlocs do. There was another thought that just came to my head. Oh, the ugly stage. I wanted to do that. Let me put that on my list because I want to go back and I put unglued. I want to go back and just make real quick shorts for you all so you can, if you just need to remember something. And I can't spell ugly, y'all. I spell all kinds of stuff. All right, the ugly stage, before I forget. Ugly stage, right? Which is the stage, for those of you who don't know, it's just a stage where your locks are a little awkward. Like, they might stick up when they're not supposed to. They might not go down when they are supposed to. Just the so-called ugly stage. And that's the stage in between your hair swelling up and trying to lock, and it starts budding and things like that. So it starts to swell up. That's your ugly stage. But when your hair, after it's swelling, it has to condense and drop, then you get into like your lock stage where you look, really good. I know that phrase, right? The ugly stage. But I know that people know what I mean. So it's just that awkward stage where your hair is changing and it's like really in between, trying to decide, does this person want me to like stay like this forever? And once it gets it together, then it has to condense itself and drop, and then you have your mature locks. Now, but for that matter, traditional locks go through that more than Microlocs. I honestly, if I had a quote unquote ugly stage, I really cannot really tell or pinpoint it. And I guess because they're small, it's a little harder to tell. But your traditional locks, because they are bigger and larger, I guess if they're not cooperating, it's a little bit more noticeable than for your smaller locks, for it to be noticeable. And then too, I think that people with Microlocs, because ours are so small, maybe we tend to do certain styles to where we can't pick up on it. But in my experience and from the lock journeys I've watched and from the ones that I've helped start and go through and do for my clients and myself, I don't really see the so-called ugly stage with the smaller locks like you might see with the bigger ones. So I think it's just a little bit more noticeable if you have traditional locks than if you have the Microlocs. But yeah, I know people don't like calling it the ugly stage, but some people still do. And I think that most people who have been through it, they know about that time where their hair was looking just a little awkward, like just like, why are you doing this to me? Just a little awkward. All right, I think I have only one more, unless you all can think of anything else that I can compare Microlocs and traditional locks to. And the last one is just the time between your retwisting and your retie. If we're talking about the shortest amount of time, the longest, who can go the longest before you have to do something to your roots, is traditional locks. Traditional locks do not require as much maintenance as the Microlocs. Now, in the beginning, you might do your traditional locks and your retwist like every 4 weeks because you're training your hair to be locks. But once your locks are matured and they got this down pack and you both got this little system going, you decide when you want to do your retwist. It's not quite that way with Microlocs because letting your roots grow out way too much can create thinness and holes, because we're doing the interlocking too. So we have to be really careful. If you have small locks, you can't afford to go as long as you feel like going before you get your roots done. Now me, I always try not to, but it doesn't really work. I usually do my roots like every 3 months. Yeah, I do them every 3 months. But a good time for me to do them would be like every 2 months, but I don't. I usually go the full 12 weeks most times before I do them. And that still is a long, long time. But you usually hear about like semi-freeform and freeform locks happening with traditional locks because their locks will not tell on them as much with their bigger, when they're bigger and you letting them grow out. And also, this is something to consider too, and I'm going to do Shades of Sage ones. What I do like about both of them, but even more so, I think with traditional locks, is like traditional locks, you can do those pretty 2-strand twists with them that look really, really pretty. I've also seen people like brush their hair back like in a swoop or straight back, and it looks like they just straight natural. And like put it in a ponytail or something because their new growth could be like that. And because their parting is so thick, they literally can put water on it and brush it and pull it back, and it'll look like this whole thing right here is just natural hair, and then you just see these locks that just appear at the end in their ponytail. So that's something that traditional locks can do that Microlocs cannot necessarily do, and that is gain so much new growth, or gain so much new growth that you can kind of let it pass for regular natural hair. That made me think of something else. Wait. Gain new growth. Like if you're talking about a neater look, I'm trying to write this down too so I can remember for my shorts. A neater look. I would say traditional locks, Microlocs, because the interlock stays. The interlock that you do to your roots, when your roots grow out, it will stay until your next retie, and it will grow out, little by little, until when it does get so much, then you're like, all right, it's time to get a retie. Traditional locks, you will always have that part of new growth there, even when your locks are mature. So your locks are never going to grow out your scalp retwisted. And I think that's something that maybe was a misconception that even I had. Like, your hair is not about to grow out your scalp retwisted or interlocked. And because retwist is more of a style than locking your hair, that's a common misconception that retwisting is locking it, and that's not true. Retwisting is just styling it. So the moment it gets wet, it could come undone. But if you have extra curly hair, you could wet your hair and it not come undone. But retwisting is more of a style, whereas interlocking is a permanent thing. Like, your interlocks do not come out at your root just because you wet it. It will stay. Whereas retwisting, if you move your hair the wrong way or move it the opposite way or wet it, it could come out. So retwist lasts longer. Retwist lasts shorter. So if you're looking for something to last you from maintenance to maintenance, you would go with the interlock because the retwist lasts shorter than the interlock does. All right, Shades of Sage said the cost of it, because sister locks are super expensive. Let me write that down though. The cost. Yes, sister locks, Microlocs are expensive, and that's because it takes so much time, and because the parting and everything's so small. And if you are using the interlocking method from root to tip, that takes time. So yes, if you're talking about installing it and maintenance of it, Microlocs cost more, sister locks cost more, and traditional locks cost a little bit less. They cost less because and that's because of the size of it. If your traditional locks, if your Microlocs, the smaller they get, the more you're gonna pay. So the smaller your locks get in general, the more you're gonna pay if you're letting somebody else do it. If you're doing it yourself, then hey, it's just your time that you're gonna be using up. But traditional locks are a little more not as costly as the Microlocs and as the sister locks. But yeah, y'all, I think that's it. Unless you have anything else, don't forget to comment any questions, concerns, anything you can add to this debate. We're just trying to see which one is better, Microlocs or traditional locks, and neither one is better. It really is just a preference. It's a preference on some of the things that we went through and you deciding what would you rather deal with, what would you not rather deal with, and you're probably not going to get everything on your list, like everything you want to deal with. You're probably going to have some things that you're like, oh, I wish I didn't have to do this with my locks. But that's with kind of any hair care. There's going to be stuff that you don't really like. But yeah, other than that, it's just a preference. Do you prefer your locks to be traditional? Do you prefer them to be smaller and micro locks? And then I would just say, and that's why I'm doing this video, know the reasons why. Because just looking at locks and saying they're pretty is not enough to help you make your decision, because something that is pretty to you might be too high maintenance for what you want to do with your hair, or too expensive, or you just don't like the care that it requires. So it does depend, and then you do have to you do want to know what you're getting into. So that's why I try to do these videos for my clients and things, because I get some of these questions a lot, and I try to help them decide based on what I know about them. But the more you know yourself, you can kind of make that decision yourself on which one to do. But the good thing is, many of my clients, because I have done their hair, I kind of can feel out like what would be good for them. Like what would be good, like in my head, I could see them with locks, and I kind of know what locks they should get and how they should maintain them. But yeah, y'all, that is pretty much it. I would go through and tell you all of them real quick, but that would ruin the whole video. You gotta watch the video. But we went through like 12 different points here. If you think of any other points, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for joining. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and then I gotta reach 4,000 watch hours, and I'm only halfway there, so I'm really trying. Would you say people should start over? Like if they have locks now, should they start over? Is that what you mean? I've had that question asked to me a couple of times about whether or not they should start over. And it really, really depends on the person. If you are a person who is like never going to get past it, then just do it. Just start over. If you're a person who's like, I can learn to like it or love it or whatever the case may be, then I wouldn't start over. Because let's keep in mind that even though you can retain your length, combing out your locks is going to give you, you're going to lose some density in your hair. There is a lock on my head. Sometimes I can find it. One that I kept messing up. And before, I thought to myself, let me have my sister. Let's see if this is it. I don't know. Before I thought to myself, let me have my sister undo it, I took out a lock before. I feel like, I don't know. It might be this one. It might not be. But, ooh. I saw someone just subscribe to my channel. Asha. Girl, I don't know how to say your name. I'm so sorry. But it might be this one. I could be wrong. But one of the locks in the back I always mess up, and I had my sister redo it. But before I did, I took it out, and I noticed that when I took it out, that lock was visibly thinner than the other locks. Now because it got thick, maybe I can't tell, but when you do comb them out, your hair does lose some density because of you combing it out, especially if you're not patient. So if you have the patience to comb it out, and you're still new, like you're under a year or barely a year, like you just got over a year, and you want to keep these locks in for a long time, and you don't plan on combing them out for years and years and years, but there's something that you're not happy with, then I would say comb them out, honestly, because it all is a journey. And if there's something that you don't like and you know you're not going to get past, because there's some people that like know they're not going to get past not liking this thing, then I would say comb it out and start all over. Like, what do you have to lose? Comb it out, start all over. Maybe even comb it out, let your hair be free for a few months and kind of build it back up before you start your locks. It's a journey. You can definitely do it. If you plan on having your locks in for only like 4 years or so, and you know you're just going to comb it out because you only want to get the length or whatever the case may be, then it might not be worth combing it out then and then combing it out a few years later. So if you plan on keeping it for a long time and there's something you really don't like and you know you're not going to get over it, because some people know they're not going to get over it. And they know every time they look at it, they're like, man, I wish it was like this. You prolonging the time is just making your locks get settled in that style and in that way. And then when you do comb it out, it's going to be even more that you're combing it out and even harder to comb it out. So I would say if you can't get past it and you have locks for a very little bit of time, like a year or so, comb them out. If you already know you're going to comb them out in a few years, I wouldn't waste the time to comb them out. I would just keep going through and continue with your journey if you're just using locks to grow your hair out, because I do hear about that also. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. I feel like I just put the middle finger out. Please forgive me. I promise you I didn't. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Any other questions, any other things we can compare. I am going to put together some shorts. So I kind of already did, but I just want to give you like real quick which one is better to kind of help you decide. And that's why I do these videos, because nobody wants to comb them out after you done did them. But if you're not educated enough about it and you don't really know what to expect, that's how people start combing them out. And that's why I also mentioned the ugly stage, because I get that question like a lot where people are like, but it's frizzy, but it's this, but it's that. And I think people have to understand that the lock journey has some stages in it where your locks are not going to look like locks. They're going to look like maybe they're frizzy, or maybe the journey is not going so well. But if you would just ride that out, trust me, the end result will be much more beautiful and much nicer, and it will look put together and it will look like locks. But you got to give it time. It is going to get frizzy. And I do remember mine getting frizzy at one point. Part of that I think was because of the blow dryer, but I gave it time, and then honestly the frizziness just kind of went away. So, yeah. Yes, please don't forget to like it. Thank you so much, Shima. Don't forget to like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But again, yeah, give yourself some room for your locks to grow, mature, and be everything that you want it to be, because it, for the most part, will be really, really nice. But the more you educate yourself, you can keep yourself from combing out those locks that you don't like. Yeah. And I think parting and size is one of the biggest things. So just trying to help you all out. I hope it helps. Don't forget to comment. Any other questions, any other suggestions. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope to see you all in the next one. Until then, adios.